So we're looking today at this question, life on other planets. It's the last of 5 questions that someone posed on YouTube several months ago now. Possibly the most difficult, the most challenging. We'll see. Anyway, this is what was written on that YouTube video as a comment so many months ago. Life in other planets? No way. This is a scientific impossibility. Other planets are just too hot or too cold to shelter life, or have an enormous gravity, or are just made of gas and you can't step on them. An important one, I think, for us to grapple with. I have to say, I think I'm not going to satisfy everybody today. I am going to give you a sense of some of the explanations or understandings that have been put forward about this issue, give you some sense of where I journey with it as well. But I'm just going to point out also the usefulness of it, in that it provides a challenge to readers of Swedenborg. It makes us stop and think about how we consider his work and what it means for us. And I think that is a useful thing. Rather than just reading something and taking it on board 100% without processing it, without thinking it, here we have in this question opportunity to sit, to stop, to take stock of things and to reassess our attitude to what we're reading. Do I then take this material and integrate it into my understanding? Do I dismiss it altogether? What do I learn from what Swedenborg has to write? If you're interested in diving into the material itself, you want to look at these 2 books. The first one is Worlds in Space, and I have my copy here, otherwise known as Earths in the Universe. But this is really a collection of material taken from some of what is written in Arcana Coelestia, or Heavenly Secrets. So this is where you will find this material about spirits from other planets. I want us just though to understand what we're talking about here, because the idea of life on other planets is not actually so far-fetched. If you remember what I talked about in terms of the immensity of space, there's our solar system, there's the galaxy within which our solar system resides, and then there's the many galaxies around the universe. Somewhere, surely, other than this planet, there is life. That in itself is not so far-fetched. Indeed, we have scientists today who are busy doing things like sending, probes off into space with messages in case there's someone out there to read it. I want you also to understand that this idea of spirits from other planets was very common in Swedenborg's day. So, for example, someone pointed out to me a statement made by Immanuel Kant, which presumed that we were not alone in the universe. If we compare the idea of the infinity of God and the hugeness of the universe, and indeed the potential of heaven, the idea that we are alone in this universe becomes a bit silly. We're insignificantly small, really. These are the statements that Swedenborg makes along those sorts of lines. The problem is Swedenborg's assertion that there are spirits on the planets in our solar system. That's the challenge. Because we, in our modern day, have sent probes to Mars, we've sent men to the moon. There are other rockets and things going out further into space, and we believe we understand more about planets like Jupiter and Saturn. And this is the problem. Not so much that there's other life in space, but that he claims this idea of spirits associated with the planets in our solar system. So there are many different theories around how this has come about. I'll share just quickly some of them. One of the theories is that when Swedenborg speaks to spirits in the spiritual world, and the spirit says, "Oh, I'm from the first planet in our solar system," then the suggestion has been, Swedenborg's immediate assumption is that, well, he's speaking about Mercury. Whereas, of course, every sun that has a solar system around it has a first planet. Who's to say that he's not from one of those? We were discussing this at question time the other day, and someone put forward the idea of dark energy and dark matter, which we are now just becoming aware of scientifically, not even to the point of understanding, but we know it's there. And one of the suggestions was, does this point to parallel universes? And perhaps those spirits might come from those parallel universes instead. Another theory is the spiritual world stands outside of space and time. So is there a connection that we can make in the spiritual world that we're unable to make in the natural world because of that? Another theory is, are these spirits that have become associated with these planets after their death? And one of the things that I think about is that each of our planets in our solar system has been given a name, and been given a name from mythology. And I wonder how much of an attachment to that mythology, and there's a certain character that these planets might have, or in our perception, based upon the fact that we've given them a name. So, for example, what does it mean to describe someone as mercurial, as in from Mercury? This is a characteristic we talk about. There's also a relationship to another question that Swedenborg poses, and I've called it in my notes the European question. In Swedenborg's day, living in Europe as he did, and with trade and exploration of our planet going on, if you come back to the people living in Europe at the time, they know about Christianity, of course, because Europe is a Christian continent. They know about Judaism because it's in the Bible, and there are Jews living in Europe amongst the other Europeans. They know about Islam because it's the closest other religious neighbour. But they've only got a very vague notion of religions like Hinduism and Buddhism and Shinto. All of these other Eastern religions really are unknown. And one of the questions has always been, why do we know about Jesus and believe that we must acknowledge Jesus to be saved, and yet there are all these other people out there who do not know about Jesus? And so this matter of the planets becomes merely an extension of that. Why do we know about Jesus? But Jesus didn't go to these other planets. What about all of those other people? It's the same question, it's just a bigger magnitude. And interestingly, in this book, Earth and the Universe, or Worlds in Space, Swedenborg refers to people and other cultures in a way that we would recognise. I read something like this: in every other world, divine truth is made known by word of mouth. And I recognise there an attribute of, say, Australian Indigenous culture, where there's not so much writing and things written down. There's certainly cave paintings and those sorts of things, and there are other artefacts. But wisdom is passed down by mouth from generation to generation. Again, talking about living in family groups. This describes Australian Indigenous culture as much as it might describe people from other planets. My question is, what can we learn from this? What can we learn from this challenge? And what indeed does Swedenborg say about it? So first thing I'll just mention is that there is an interest in alien life. I think there always has been. A channel that I'm aware of on YouTube is called The Fifth Kind. I don't know whether you've ever come across this. It's an Australian channel. I believe the chap Paul Wallace, whose picture you can see there, lives in Canberra. He has 1 million subscribers. And one of the interesting things about this channel is that he attributes the Bible to aliens and alien technology. So he seeks to describe some of the things that take place in the Bible as signs of alien life, alien visits to the world, which have been misinterpreted in religious ways. Just put that out there. But the main thing that Swedenborg says is that we are, on our planet, largely external people. We are more interested in the technology of our hands than we are in the wisdom of the soul and the heart. So, for example, he talks about writing. That we write things down to record them. In fact, in paragraph 28 of Worlds in Space, he has a little encounter with spirits he says are from the planet of Mercury, who tease us about the fact that we write on paper as though paper in itself is knowledgeable, rather than the wisdom and knowledge of the human mind. And why are we aware of Jesus when these other planets are not? Well, because the Lord came here to live a life, to have it recorded in the Word. So the fact that we commit things to paper became a fundamental characteristic which meant the Lord could come here or needed to come here for some greater purpose. So this really is the central point of this book. The Lord came here and lived a life on this planet so that we might record and then learn from this word that we write down. And I mean, look at the way we react to things. Look at the way we react even to this question. So we take a statement like, there's life on other planets. And what do we do with it? Well, we seek to verify it scientifically. We seek to measure it against the way we understand the facts. That is the way we instinctively react, rather than saying, okay, Swedenborg's made this statement. Is there something to learn from it? Is there something deeper intended there? And so we tend to sort of very easily and casually dismiss anything that doesn't fit our worldview. And this question challenges that. However, I do want to say that the Lord uses that characteristic, that very external way of approaching things, for our benefit. In that there is a truth, a deeper truth, we need to be protected from if we are unable to implement its full implications. And this is where we talk about the cherubim that guards the entrance to the garden. I'm going to go back to Mr. Wallace. Here is his impression of a cherubim, what a cherubim looks like. Do you remember that right at the end of that Genesis chapter 3, the cherubim at the entrance to the garden, preventing re-entry back into the garden? What I want to say about that chapter 3 is that the whole of what Pam read for us is descriptive of the problem that we have as external people. That we leave behind the heart, the core of wisdom in our fascination with the external world. And the end result of it, listen to what the Lord said to the snake, you will crawl on your belly. So we're talking about only scuffing the surface. The very lowest part of wisdom is what we typically come into contact with in our daily lives. The most external, the most, what Swedenborg talks about, the sensual level. The woman given pain in childbirth. It's all about the way that our spiritual growth, our spiritual life, you think about the way rebirth is spoken of in the Word, that only comes with pain. We need to go through a process which is difficult for us because we don't accept the wisdom that is found in the garden. We accept only the external, most external form of wisdom until something brings us to a halt and makes us stop and think. And the toil of Adam having to till the soil for food. This is a description not of our need to produce food, but it's a description of our seeking after knowledge. This is what we do. We till the soil. We till the lowest level of life. We sift through it as though we're panning for gold, rather than standing up and looking up and seeing the wonder all around us, and it's there for us to see if we're prepared to look for it. So this is what this story is all about. It's about this fascination with what is external. And so the cherubim at the garden is the guard that we cannot pass until we look up and we see something deeper. Now there's cherubim elsewhere too. The cherubim on the mercy seat on the Ark of the Covenant. So the children of Israel were forbidden to create an idol or an image of God. But this was the closest thing they got to an image. And God was said to reside in the space between the cherubim. But here's the thing. Try and throw a stone at God, and what do you hit? Well, it either passes right through or you hit the cherubim. The cherubim are that most external level, the most external expressions of truths which you can seek to destroy if you wish, but you will never hit God if that's the level that you're thinking at. So I talk about this as an un-image. It points to something deeper. All right, I want to finish with two statements, and I'm taking this from John Chadwick, who did this translation, his preface to this book. If you're interested in this question, very good read. Very, very good read. But here are two statements that he makes. Speaking about Swedenborg, the purpose of his visionary powers was to reveal the nature of the spiritual world, and by his writings to guide his fellow men towards a better understanding of religious and spiritual matters. And then talking about this question of, well, why does Swedenborg claim spirits from other worlds, particularly? He says this: Swedenborg was kept in ignorance of facts about the natural world and was allowed to persist in the false beliefs current in his time. If he had been able to demonstrate huge advances in scientific knowledge, his reputation would have become such that everything he said would have been automatically accepted. Yet he frequently insists that mere assent to a proposition is not the same as wholehearted belief. And we are called to wholehearted belief.